There is a particular kind of exhaustion that has no name. It does not come from working too hard or sleeping too little. It comes from the low-level, constant effort of being aware of how you are coming across, from choosing your words just carefully enough, not always out of kindness, but out of a very old habit of making sure what you say lands the right way, from reading the room before you speak, from adjusting, just slightly, to what the moment seems to require, from the small performance that happens before the larger one, and doing all of this so automatically for so long that you no longer notice you are doing it. Until one evening, a drive home alone, a moment between one obligation and the next, a silence that arrives before you have had the chance to fill it, something surfaces. Not dramatic, not a crisis, just a quiet, persistent question. Am I actually living this life? Or am I managing how it appears? Not because the life looks wrong from the outside, not because anything has broken, but because somewhere inside the careful management, the reading of rooms, the adjusting, the waiting to see how things land, the center has quietly shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, one small calibration at a time, over many years. Carl Jung spent decades studying what happens when a person lives this way long enough, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of deep recognition. He noticed that a particular kind of person moves through life carrying a very specific weight. Not the weight of failure, not the weight of having done something wrong, the weight of someone who has spent years making sure they are acceptable, and has slowly, without noticing, lost the thread of who they actually are. This video will not tell you to stop caring what others think, as if that were a simple decision. It will walk with you into the deeper reason why living through other people's eyes has felt, for so long, like the only way to live. Stay until the end. Because the version of yourself you have been waiting for permission to be has been there the entire time. Waiting for the noise to settle enough to finally be heard. Number 1. Living by the external gaze. The origin of alienation. Notice what happens in the moment before you speak. Not always, just in certain situations. Something inside you runs a very quick check. Will this land well? Is this the right moment? Will it make things awkward? You do not experience it as hesitation. It happens too fast for that. It simply feels like being thoughtful, like knowing how things work. But that check, that automatic, barely conscious adjustment, has been running in the background of your life for a very long time. And it has cost something you may not yet have added up. Jung spent years studying what he called the loss of the inner center. Not a breakdown, not a crisis, but the very quiet, very gradual process by which a person stops orienting their life from inside themselves and begins orienting it from outside. He noticed that when a person grows up without a stable enough sense of their own worth, one that exists independent of how others respond, they are forced to borrow one. They use the external world as a mirror. They measure their value by what that mirror reflects back. And the problem is not that the mirror lies. The problem is that a mirror cannot tell you who you are. It can only show you how you appear. Think of what it feels like when a compliment lands. Not just pleasant, something more structural than that. As if it was holding something up that you did not realize was leaning. Think of what it feels like when someone goes quiet at the wrong moment. When a message sits unanswered. When a room responds to something you said with a silence just long enough to register. These things should not matter as much as they do. And yet, This is not a character flaw. It is not vanity or weakness in the simple sense. It is what happens when the center of your inner life is located somewhere outside you, somewhere that requires constant incoming signal to feel stable. The psychologist William James wrote that the deepest principle of human nature is the craving to be appreciated. He did not mean this as criticism. He meant it as observation. We are built for recognition. In childhood, it is how we learn we are safe, how we learn we belong. The trouble begins when that wiring never updates. When a person reaches adulthood still running on the same system, still needing the signal from outside to know they are okay inside. And what that produces over time is not just exhaustion. It is a quiet form of alienation. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind you can point to, but the slow, accumulating kind that comes from spending years making choices shaped more by what will be accepted than by what is true. You chose a direction because it looked right from the outside. You adjusted an opinion because the room was moving a different way. You swallowed something real because the moment was not safe enough to say it. Each individual choice seemed reasonable, but the accumulation of those choices traces the outline of a life that is not entirely yours. There is a word for this. Jung called it psychological displacement, not a disorder, not a failure of character, but the natural consequence of living for years without an inner anchor. You have not lost yourself all at once. You have drifted very slowly, one small adjustment at a time. And the drifting is so gradual, so unremarkable in any single moment, that most people do not notice it is happening. They simply notice one ordinary day that they feel slightly foreign to themselves, that the life they are living, the one that looks correct, the one others would call fine, does not feel entirely inhabited. And the exhaustion that doesn't go away with rest is not from doing too much. It is from being, for a very long time, someone slightly other than yourself. Number 2, the persona. The cost of wanting to be accepted. At some point, and you cannot name exactly when you became very good at a particular version of yourself. Not a dishonest version, just the version that works. The one that knows how to enter a room and find the right register. That knows what to say when the mood is tense. That has learned, through years of small observations, how to be someone others find easy to be around. You did not design this. It developed the way most useful things develop. Through repetition, through reward, through the quiet reinforcement of 1,000 moments where being that version of yourself made things go smoothly. Carl Jung called this the persona, from the Latin word for the masks worn by actors in ancient theater. He was careful to say, it is not a lie. Every person requires a social face, a way of moving through the world that is legible to others. The problem is not having one. The problem is forgetting you do. Because when the mask is worn long enough, when it is consistently rewarded, consistently required, consistently the thing that makes life run smoothly, something very subtle shifts. You stop thinking of it as something you put on. It simply becomes who you are. Think of someone who has spent years being the easy one. Not demanding, not difficult, always a little more accommodating than strictly necessary. Not because they were performing. They genuinely wanted to be liked, genuinely wanted things to go well. And for a long time, it worked. But one evening, ordinary, unremarkable, they catch themselves doing something they have done 1,000 times, adjusting what they were about to say, not because it was wrong, but because it might have landed awkwardly, might have made someone uncomfortable, might have changed the temperature of the room, and for the first time they really notice the adjustment. The thought that was shaped before it left their mouth. The version of themselves that arrived instead of the version that was actually there. And sitting with that, even briefly, raises a question that has nowhere comfortable to land. How long has this been happening? The wearing of the persona is not a moral failure. It is the natural result of learning, very early, that certain versions of yourself were welcomed and others were not. That being pleasant kept things stable. That being agreeable made you easier to love. That the self which asked for things, expressed inconvenient feelings, took up a different kind of space that self required more than the environment could reliably provide. And so you learned to lead with the version that worked. The cost of this is not obvious at first. The persona serves you well. It earns trust, affection, the sense of being needed and included. The cost appears later, in the strange blankness that arrives when someone asks what you want, really want, and the answer takes a moment too long to form. In the tiredness that has nothing to do with overwork. In the sense of having been somewhere else while your own life was happening. Jung wrote that the aim of psychological development is nothing less than to divest the self of the false wrappings of the persona. Not to destroy social roles. Not to become someone who says everything they think without filter, but to stop allowing the mask to govern the inner life. And in that loosening, which feels uncomfortable precisely because it is real, the question that matters most begins to form. Not who do others need me to be, but who have I always been when no one was watching? Number 3, comparison. As a form of denying your individual path, there is a reflex that appears the moment you begin to loosen the performance. The moment you start asking whether the life you have been carefully managing is actually yours, almost immediately something pulls your attention sideways to the person in your circle who seems further along, to the version of life everyone else appears to be living, to the question of where you're not in relation to where you want to be, but in relation to where they seem to be. And before you have fully registered what is happening, the original question is gone, replaced by a comparison that will not resolve. Comparison feels like self-awareness. It presents itself as useful, but it does something very specific. It borrows someone else's destination and uses it to measure your progress. Every person carries a different inner rhythm, a different shape of becoming, a timeline that belongs only to them. What looks like falling behind may be the necessary slowness of someone moving in a completely different direction. What looks like being lost may be the only honest response to a path that was never yours. But comparison cannot see any of this. It only sees ahead or behind, more or less, faster or slower. And the longer you use it as a compass, the further you move from any sense of your own direction. Hector, 36, had spent years measuring his life against the people he had gone to university with. They had titles he did not have, stability he had not found, a clarity of direction that made his own circling feel like failure. Each time he saw an update, a promotion, a house, a life that looked assembled, he felt the familiar weight settle back onto his chest. He was not jealous exactly. It was something quieter and more corrosive than jealousy. The sense that there was a right way to do this, and he was not doing it. What he could not see, what the comparison would not let him see, was that the circling was not failure. It was the honest movement of someone who had not yet found the path that actually belonged to him. The people he compared himself to were not ahead of him on his journey. They were somewhere else entirely, on their own journeys, moving toward their own things. the moment he stopped using their coordinates to locate himself. Something strange happened. He had no idea where he was. And for the first time in years, that felt like the beginning of something honest. Because you cannot find your own path while you are busy measuring how far you are from someone else's. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not the most admired version, not the most successful version, the specific, irreducible, authentically you version. And that version cannot be found by looking sideways. It only becomes visible when you stop." Before we continue, if something in the last few minutes touched a part of you that has been very quietly waiting, perhaps the image of catching yourself adjust before you speak, or the recognition of that background hum of wanting to know how things have landed, or the tiredness of having been for a long time slightly other than yourself, leave something in the comments. It does not need to be complete. It does not need to explain everything. Just one honest word or sentence about what it feels like to have lived, even slightly, at a distance from yourself. Because sometimes the first act of returning is simply naming where you have been. Number 4, withdrawing projection. Who is really judging you? Something particular happens when you begin to step back from the performance and the comparison. You expect the anxiety to follow. And it does. But here is what is strange. You are no longer competing, no longer measuring, no longer trying to be the version of yourself that earns something. And yet the fear of being judged does not go away. A look from across the room, a comment with an ambiguous edge, a silence where something warmer should have been, and the same feeling returns. The sense of being assessed, found wanting, seen wrong. Jung called this projection. The mechanism by which the psyche places what it cannot bear to look at inside itself outward, onto the world, onto other people's eyes. When there is a belief inside us that is too painful to examine directly, not good enough. Too much, fundamentally unacceptable, we do not simply suppress it. We send it outward. We begin to perceive it in other people's responses. We believe they are thinking it. And the fear of being judged, traced carefully, reveals something very specific. The harshest judge has never been in the room. It has been inside. All along. The internal voice that does not allow mistakes. That does not allow the ordinary humanness of being imperfect and still okay. Carl Jung had always felt that her colleagues did not quite take her seriously. She could not point to anything specific. No single comment, no clear dismissal. Just a persistent, low-level sense that when she spoke, people were internally reserving judgment, waiting to find the flaw. She had spent years managing this, preparing more carefully than necessary, qualifying her statements before anyone could question them, monitoring reactions while she was still mid-sentence. Until, in an ordinary conversation with someone she trusted, she said it out loud for the first time. And the other person gently, without making it a moment, said, "I do not think it is them." It was not an accusation, it was an observation. And something in Carl Jung went very quiet. Because when she traced the voice, the one that told her she was being evaluated, found lacking, not quite enough, she recognized it. It was not anyone in the office. It was old. It had been with her long before this job, this team, this room. And recognizing that, just recognizing it, not solving it, not making it go away, changed something. The world outside did not immediately become safer, but it became less authoritative. Because she had stopped asking it to carry what was always hers to face. Jung wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When you pull the projection back, when you stop asking who is judging me and begin asking which part of me is saying this, what was terrifying begins to become workable. Not comfortable, not resolved, but yours. And what is yours can be met, held. Gradually, honestly, integrated. What belongs to others simply cannot. Number 5, solitude. A necessary condition to encounter the self. When the checking stops, even briefly, there is a quality to the silence that is difficult to describe. Not peaceful exactly, not immediately, more like the feeling of a room after a noise you did not realize was constant has finally ceased. A kind of disorientation. And then slowly, beneath that disorientation, the beginning of being able to hear yourself. Most people do not avoid solitude because they dislike being alone. They avoid it because they know in some part of themselves they do not often visit that certain things will surface when there is no one left to keep them submerged. The question that has not been answered. The desire that has not been allowed. The grief being managed around rather than felt. And so the busyness continues. The calendar stays full. The phone is checked before the eyes have fully opened. Not from motivation, from the precise, practiced avoidance of what lives in the stillness. Yuna had not had a genuinely empty morning in 4 years, not because her life demanded it, but because something in her had learned, quietly and without announcement, to fill every available space. A podcast during the commute. Messages answered before breakfast. The low hum of background noise maintained with the consistency of someone who knows exactly what happens when it stops. When her schedule cleared unexpectedly for a week, she did not rest. She felt a kind of panic she could not explain. Not the panic of emergency, the panic of exposure. As if the silence were asking a question she was not ready to answer. She sat with it anyway. Not because she was brave, but because she was tired of running. And what surfaced wasn't the crisis she had been bracing for. It was much simpler than that. Just herself. Underneath everything she had been using to not be alone with herself. Preferences she had not known she still had. A quality of attention she had not turned inward in years. The beginning of her own company. Jung wrote that loneliness doesn't come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. For years, the most important things had not been communicated to anyone, not even herself. Solitude doesn't create the inner voice. It only creates the conditions in which it can finally be heard. And paradoxically, the people who learn to inhabit their own quiet, who can be alone without panic, without the compulsive need to fill the space, tend to be more genuinely present when they return to others. Not because they have grown cold, but because they are no longer looking to others to tell them who they are. They already know. Number 6. From the performing self to a disciplined inner life. There is a kind of discipline that produces nothing visible. No achievement, no story that impresses anyone. It does not accelerate because someone is watching. It is simply the practice of returning. Every day, without fanfare, to the inner life. To the thread of what is actually true for you, underneath the noise of what is expected, admired, or required. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the ancient world. He commanded armies, governed an empire. And in private, in the hours no one was watching, he wrote reminders to himself that he never intended anyone to read. Not how to appear wise, not how to be remembered. Just, am I living in alignment with what I actually believe? The meditations were not a performance. They were a practice. The unglamorous daily work of someone who understood that the inner life requires the same attention as any external obligation, and that without that practice, without the return, again and again, to what is actually true, the outward life, however successful, eventually becomes hollow. James had spent 15 years building a career that looked, from the outside, exactly as it was supposed to. The right role, the right progression, the language of success spoken fluently and without hesitation. But somewhere around the 12-year mark, he noticed something. He could not remember the last time he had done anything, without first calculating how it would be received. Even his leisure was managed. The books he mentioned because they signaled the right things. The interests he performed rather than felt. He was not unhappy in the obvious sense, but he was tired in a way that sleep did not touch. He started something very small, a journal. 15 minutes in the morning, before the day organized itself around everyone else's expectations. He did not write about goals or productivity. He wrote about what he actually thought, what he had actually felt the day before, what he had wanted and had not said. No one read it. No one knew about it. And that, he realized slowly, was precisely the point. For the first time in years, something was entirely his. Not because it was hidden, but because it required nothing from anyone else. It did not produce anything. It did not advance anything. But it gave him something he had not been able to name he was missing. A sense of his own existence that did not depend on someone else's response. The discipline that no one sees is the only one that actually holds, because it is the only discipline rooted in something the world cannot reach. And from that practice, small, private, entirely unremarkable to anyone watching, something gradually changed. Not in how others saw him, in how he occupied his own life, with a little more weight, a little more center, just enough to know the difference. Number 7, withdrawing energy from the world. Stop seeking approval. Something shifts eventually for the person who has been doing this work. Not suddenly, not with clarity or certainty, just a quietness that was not there before. You notice it in small moments, a decision made without the immediate need to share it. A morning that passed without the background hum of waiting to see how something landed. A thing completed a choice, a piece of work, a conversation that you felt settled about before anyone responded. Not because you stopped caring about quality or connection, but because the center of your sense of yourself has moved. Even slightly, from somewhere out there to somewhere in here. Most people understand, intellectually, that seeking approval is a kind of dependency. What is harder to see is how total that dependency can become. When the sense of your own worth lives outside you in recognition, in positive response, in the ongoing signal from others that you are okay, a portion of your energy is always flowing outward, dispersed into the world, waiting to return as confirmation. And while it is out there, it is not available to you. It cannot feed the inner life. It cannot build anything that belongs entirely to you. The shift that happens when this changes is not dramatic. It feels more like settling, like something that was slightly off balance finding, almost imperceptibly, its own center. Elena was 41 when she finished a project she had spent 2 years on. Something she had cared about genuinely, more genuinely than most things she had done in a long time. And when it was done, she waited for the response that would tell her it had mattered. Days passed. The response was quiet, not negative, just present but ordinary, and something in her expected to collapse. Instead, she noticed something she had not anticipated. She already knew, not from the response, but from something that had been there before any response arrived. A settled quality, a sense not intellectual, but felt that what she had made was true, and the absence of the signal did not take that away. Jung wrote that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Terrifying because, for a long time, the approval of others has been standing in for that acceptance. It has been doing the work that self-knowledge was supposed to do. And when approval is quiet, when no signal comes, what remains is the real question. Can you provide that for yourself? The answer begins not as confidence, but as practice. The small daily choice to locate your sense of worth in something the world cannot reach. In the quality of your own attention. In the honesty of what you have made or said or chosen. In the simple, unglamorous fact that you know what is true for you and are no longer asking anyone else to confirm it. That is not a small thing. It is the beginning of a life that is genuinely yours to live. Number 8, the unglamorous return. What living from the inside actually looks like. There is a version of this story that ends with clarity, with a moment, a conversation, a decision, a morning that feels different from the ones before it, in which everything settles into place. And the person who has been living just outside themselves finally steps back in and stays. That version is not quite true. Not because the return is not real, but because a return that took years to drift from does not happen in a single direction, on a single day, and then hold. What actually happens is quieter and less linear than that. There are mornings where something has shifted, where a choice is made from the inside rather than calculated from the outside, where a sentence leaves the mouth without being checked first. And there is something in those moments, not triumph, not relief exactly, more like a very quiet recognition. This is what it feels like to be here. And then the next day, or the day after, the old current pulls again. The room is read before the words come. The response is waited for before the feeling is decided. And the person who was, just yesterday, inhabiting themselves more fully finds themselves, again, slightly outside. This is not failure. This is what the return actually looks like. The philosopher Simone Weil wrote that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. She meant it as an outward gesture, the full presence we offer another person. But the same is true inward. To pay honest attention to your own inner life, not as a project, not as self-improvement with a destination, but simply as a daily act of noticing. What is actually true for me right now? What do I actually want from this? What am I adjusting, and why? This is not dramatic. It produces nothing visible, but it is the only kind of work that slowly, incrementally, moves the center of a life from somewhere out there to somewhere in here. Not all at once, one small act of noticing at a time. Because the opposite of living for other people's approval is not certainty. It is not the permanent, unshakable knowledge of who you are and what you want. That is just another kind of performance, the performance of someone who has finally figured it out. The opposite of living for approval is something far more ordinary. It is the willingness to keep returning to the question, to the quiet, to the thread of what is actually true for you, even on the days when the thread is thin, even when the room is loud and the old habit of adjusting is faster than the new habit of staying, even when you cannot tell in the middle of a moment whether you are living from the inside or simply running a very practiced simulation of it. The returning matters more than the staying, because no one stays. The question is only whether you know how to come back. Jung described the work of individuation, the long, unglamorous process of becoming who you actually are, not as a summit to be reached, but as a path to be walked, returned to, lost, found again. Not because the person walking it is failing, but because the path itself is alive. It changes as you change. What felt settled at 35 surfaces differently at 42. What you thought you had understood about yourself reveals a new layer when the circumstances do. This is not a flaw in the process. It is the process. And understanding that, truly understanding it, not just knowing it intellectually, changes something about how the work is held. It becomes less of a problem to be solved, and more of a practice to be sustained, quietly, without applause, without arrival. Just the daily, private, entirely unglamorous act of coming back to yourself. Again. And finding each time that the way back is a little more familiar than before. We began with a very particular kind of exhaustion. The kind that comes not from overwork, but from the long, constant effort of calibrating yourself to the world, of adjusting before you speak, of waiting to see how things land before deciding how you feel, of living for years just slightly outside yourself. And if that description found something familiar, if something in the last several minutes has felt less like new information and more like recognition that was not accidental, that recognition is itself a kind of beginning. There is a version of yourself that has not been performing, not a better version, not a future version that arrives once you have figured everything out. Simply the one that exists underneath the adjustments, the one that knows what it thinks before calculating how that will land. That version has not gone anywhere. It has simply been waiting quietly, without urgency for enough stillness to make itself heard. Jung wrote, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know. That other is not a stranger. They are simply the version of you that has not yet had enough space to exist. The version with desires that were never spoken, that rests without guilt, that does not immediately calculate what it owes in return for being cared for. They have been with you the whole time, not lost, not gone, just waiting. The return to them does not require a dramatic gesture. It begins in the small. In the first time you do something true without checking the response. In the first moment you sit with your own quiet and do not immediately fill it. In the first time you answer the question, "What do you want?" without translating it first into what is acceptable. These are not small things. They are the very acts through which a life slowly becomes yours. Subscribe to where you begin, and we will keep walking inward together. not to become a better version for the world, but to stop losing yourself within it. Because everything you are looking for starts where you stopped looking. And you have been stopped at that exact place for longer than you know. Perhaps it is time to look.